Fletcher Lane didn't expect to throw a punch that night, but when he saw the drunken man grab the woman by the wrist outside the bar, he didn't hesitate. "Let go of her," Fletcher said, stepping between them, jaw tight, voice low. The man barely turned. "Mind your business, man." "She said no," Fletcher snapped, eyes locked on the guy's hand gripping her arm. The woman, tall, elegant, with wide eyes and a pale pink coat, looked more stunned than scared, but Fletcher saw the way her fingers trembled. The guy shoved Fletcher's shoulder. Wrong move. Fletcher's knuckles cracked against the guy's jaw before he even registered throwing the punch. The man stumbled back, swearing, then staggered off, muttering something about calling someone. Fletcher didn't care. He turned to the woman. "You okay?" he asked, already pulling off his flannel and offering it to her. "You're shaking." Yeah, thank you," she breathed, her voice soft but steady. He wouldn't take no for an answer. "I was trying to call a car." Fletcher nodded. "You want me to walk you somewhere safer?" "I was just trying to get to the parking garage. It's a few blocks." Her breath fogged in the cool air. "I'll walk you," he said simply. "It's late and people like him don't take hints." She hesitated, then gave him a small nod. "Okay, thanks." They walked in silence for a few steps before she glanced sideways at him. "Do you always jump into fights for strangers?" "Only on Thursdays," he said, trying to lighten the mood. "And when I'm not working nights at the garage or chasing after a 5-year-old with a glitter obsession." That made her laugh, a short, surprised sound. "You have a daughter?" "Yeah, Rosie. She's all attitude and sparkles." He smiled, not even realizing it until she smiled back. "I'm Piper Preston." "Fletcher Lane," he replied, offering his hand. Her grip was warm, confident. By the time they reached the garage, the tension had melted. She paused by a sleek black Mercedes, digging through her purse. "Thank you again. Seriously, you didn't have to do that." "Yes, well, I've got a thing about guys who don't listen to no," Fletcher said. "You sure you're okay to drive?" She looked up at him, dark eyes searching his. "I am now." He gave a short nod. "Good night, Piper." She hesitated, then opened her door and slid in. But before closing it, she leaned out. "Hey, Fletcher." He looked back. "Tell Rosie I think glitter is awesome." He chuckled. "She'll love you forever." He didn't expect to see her again. But 3 days later, she showed up at the garage. Fletcher was under the hood of a dusty Jeep, grease up to his elbows, when he heard the click of heels on concrete. "Excuse me." He slid out and blinked up at her. "Piper." She wore jeans and a blazer this time, hair tied back. Still stunning. Still way too polished for a place like this. "You remembered my name," she said, a little surprised. "I remember the names of people. Punch someone for." She laughed again, and for a second they just stood there. "I brought something," she said finally, holding out a white box. He raised an eyebrow. "Cupcakes," she said, "for the guy who kept me from getting dragged into someone's car." He took the box, a little stunned. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to." He wiped his hands on a rag and opened the box. Inside were 6 perfect cupcakes, each decorated with tiny pink flowers. "Rosie's gonna lose her mind," he said. Piper smiled. That was the idea. He looked up. "You wanna meet her?" She blinked. "Now." "Why not? She's at the diner with my sister. It's her favorite place. Pancakes bigger than her head." Piper hesitated only a moment. "Okay, let's go." 10 minutes later, they walked into the diner, the scent of syrup and bacon thick in the air. Rosie spotted Fletcher instantly and leapt off the booth. "Daddy." He caught her mid-run and hoisted her up. She had curly brown hair, a gap-toothed grin, and wore a glitter-covered unicorn shirt. Rosie, this is Piper. She brought you cupcakes. Rosie gasped, real cupcakes. Piper knelt, with pink flowers on top. Rosie wrapped her in a hug before Piper could even react. Fletcher's sister raised an eyebrow from the booth, but grinned when he shrugged. They all sat together, and Fletcher couldn't stop glancing at Piper across the table. She was laughing at Rosie's pancake stacking contest, talking about glitter like it was a serious topic, and somehow didn't flinch when syrup got on her sleeve. After they left the diner, Piper walked with them to the car. "Thanks for today," she said, watching Rosie hop into her booster seat. "Thanks for the cupcakes," Fletcher replied. They stood there, not quite ready to go. "I meant what I said," Piper added. "You didn't have to help me that night, but you did, and I'm glad." He rubbed the back of his neck. "I'm just trying to raise my kid right, show her what a good man's supposed to do." Piper looked at him like she saw something he didn't know was there. "Maybe I'll see you again." "Maybe," she said, sliding behind her wheel, but she was smiling. As she drove off in that sleek car Fletcher couldn't afford to dream about, he shook his head. She was something else. Out of his league, way out. He didn't know she was a millionaire. And he definitely didn't know she'd already started falling for him. The first time Piper saw Fletcher again after the diner, he was standing in the rain, loading tires into a delivery truck behind the auto shop. He was soaked through, his hoodie clinging to his back, but he kept working like the downpour didn't bother him. She sat in the black town car across the street, watching him through the window, heart pounding for reasons she couldn't explain. "You sure you want me to drop you off here, Miss Preston?" her driver asked cautiously. "I'll walk from here," she replied. "Thanks, Marcus." She grabbed the umbrella from the floorboard and stepped out into the storm, crossing the wet pavement toward him. Fletcher turned when he heard her boots splashing. "Piper," he said, startled, "you pick the worst weather to visit, you know that." "I didn't realize it was supposed to rain," she said, lifting the umbrella over him too. He wiped water from his brow with the back of his hand. "So what brings you to this part of town again? You lose your GPS." She tilted her head. "A client meeting got canceled last minute. I was already dressed, already out, thought I'd stop by." He eyed her camel-colored coat and leather gloves. "You get lost a lot in heels." "Only when I'm looking for something," she said, her gaze steady. He didn't ask what she was looking for. Instead, he led her into the garage, where the heat blasted from a space heater in the corner. The smell of oil and metal hung in the air, but she didn't flinch. She took off her gloves slowly, looking around. "You fix all these yourself?" she asked, nodding to the line of cars in various states of disrepair. "Most of them," he said. "Sometimes I get help when my brother's in town. Lately, it's just me." She walked over to an old Mustang with its hood up. "This one's beautiful. What's wrong with it?" "Transmission's shot. Owner wants to restore it, but I think he's more sentimental than practical." "You don't think it's worth saving?" He shrugged. "It's worth it if you've got the money and the time." She ran her fingers along the edge of the hood. "Sometimes, even ruined things deserve a second chance." He looked at her then, something unspoken hanging between them. Before he could reply, a voice called from the office door. "Fletch, Rosie's here." He turned, surprised. She wasn't supposed to be here till 5. "I got off early," his sister called out, holding Rosie's hand as the little girl skipped into the garage, glittery rain boots splashing on the floor. Rosie spotted Piper immediately. "You came back." Piper knelt to hug her. "I heard you finished all the cupcakes." Rosie grinned. "I did. Daddy let me have 2 in one day." "Reckless parenting," Fletcher muttered, but he was smiling. Piper stood. "Would it be okay if I took you both out? Maybe dinner?" Fletcher hesitated. "You don't have to do that." I know, she said, but I want to. Rosie tugged at his sleeve. Can we go, please? He looked between the two of them. Fine, but only if Rosie picks the place. Piper leaned in conspiratorially to Rosie. Anywhere you want. Rosie lit up. There's a place with fried pickles and milkshakes that Daddy says is questionable but tolerable. Piper laughed. Sounds perfect. Dinner was chaos in the best way. The tiny diner Rosie loved had neon signs and cracked vinyl booths, and the waitresses knew Fletcher by name. Piper fit in like she belonged there, letting Rosie show her how to dip fries in chocolate milkshakes without blinking. Fletcher watched them from across the table, trying not to overthink it. He didn't understand what Piper was doing, why she was choosing this, but he couldn't deny it felt good having her there. After dinner, Fletcher carried a sleeping Rosie to the truck, tucking her in carefully. Piper stood nearby, arms folded, watching him with a quiet expression. You're good at this, she said softly. He looked up at what? Being a father, taking care of things. He leaned against the truck door. Try. She stepped closer, her voice lowering. I've been around a lot of men who think taking care of people means throwing money at them. You actually show up. He didn't have an answer for that, so he said nothing. She tilted her head, eyes narrowing slightly. What if I asked you to come with me somewhere different? He blinked, like where? Just trust me. I've got responsibilities, Piper. Can't just drop everything. I'm not asking you to drop anything. Just bring it with you, she said, nodding toward the truck where Rosie slept. He looked at her, unsure, then finally said, when? Tomorrow night. I'll send a car, just dress, not like you're fixing brakes. He laughed under his breath. You sure about this? You'll understand when you get there. The next evening, the car she sent wasn't just a car, it was a chauffeured town car with tinted windows and a driver who called Fletcher, sir. He wore his cleanest pair of jeans and a button-down that Rosie insisted on ironing herself. She wore a lilac dress with sparkly shoes and clutched a stuffed unicorn like it was a passport. They drove for nearly an hour before the skyline shifted. The buildings grew taller, the streets cleaner. When they pulled up to a limestone building with gold trim and valet service, Fletcher's jaw clenched. This is a hotel, he said, looking out at the doormen in tailored coats. It's a benefit, Piper said, stepping out in a midnight blue gown that shimmered under the overhead lights. I'm one of the hosts. He stared at her. You didn't say it was formal. I figured Rosie would steal the show either way. She wasn't wrong. Inside the grand ballroom, Rosie immediately became the center of attention. People in tuxedos and gowns bent down to talk to her, laughing at her stories. Piper never left Fletcher's side, her hand brushing his arm occasionally, grounding him. She's good at this, Fletcher murmured, watching Rosie charm a senator's wife. She gets it from her dad, Piper replied. He turned to her, voice low. Why did you really bring me here? She met his gaze. Because I wanted you to see part of my world, and I wanted to see how you'd fit into it. He looked around. I don't. You do, she said simply. And why does that matter to you? There was a pause. Then, softly, she said, because I haven't felt this steady in a long time, and I think you make me feel that way. He exhaled slowly, unsure what to do with that. Before he could answer, someone called her name. Miss Preston. An older man approached, silver-haired and imposing. Excuse me, she whispered to Fletcher, her voice tight. He watched her walk away, the man placing a hand on her arm, speaking sharply. Her smile was polite, but her eyes were guarded. A waiter passed by, offering champagne. Fletcher declined, still watching Piper. Something was wrong. And he had a feeling he was about to find out exactly what. Fletcher didn't mean to listen. But when he saw Piper stiffen at the older man's touch, the instincts that had driven him to step in outside that bar flared up again. He moved closer, stopping just behind a column near the edge of the ballroom. He kept his eyes ahead, posture casual, but her voice carried just enough. "I told you I wasn't involving him, Stephen," Piper said, measured but firm. "You don't get to make that decision alone," the man replied, voice low and cutting. "Not when your family's name is on the foundation, not when your mother's legacy is tied to this. He's not a threat to the Preston name. Maybe not today, but this little performance, the charity event, the working-class boyfriend act, it's already drawing attention. You think the board won't notice?" Fletcher's stomach twisted. He didn't hear Piper's response, only the way her shoulders tightened as she turned away. She crossed the ballroom with her head held high, but her hands were clenched at her sides. He met her halfway, forcing his expression to stay neutral for Rosie's sake. She was seated on a velvet bench near the dessert table, cheerfully absorbed in a tower of macarons, oblivious. Piper drew in a breath and faced him. "Can we step outside?" He followed her through a side door that led to a marble balcony overlooking the city skyline. The air was cooler out here, the sounds of the gala muffled behind them. "I suppose I owe you an explanation," she said, resting her hands on the railing. "Not unless you want to give one," he replied, leaning beside her. "I should have told you who I was," she said after a pause. "My family runs the Preston Foundation. It's old money, very old and very complicated." Fletcher stared out at the lights beyond. So, the guy inside. "My cousin, he thinks I'm making a mistake. That being with someone like you is reckless." "And are you?" he asked, not looking at her. She turned to him, her voice quiet but clear. "No." He finally met her gaze. "Then why hide it?" "I didn't want to scare you off," she said. "You've got enough on your plate without wondering if I've got some hidden motive. I didn't plan to fall into your world, Fletcher, but I did, and I didn't want to leave it." The truth rang through her words, but it didn't make the sting disappear. He shoved his hands into his coat pockets. "I just spent the last hour thinking maybe this was something real," he said. "Now I find out I was part of some test run to see if your world could stomach mine." "That's not what this is," she said urgently. "Then what is it?" She hesitated. "It's me falling for someone who actually sees me. Not the money, not the name, just me." Fletcher looked away, jaw tight. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that." "You don't have to do anything," she said. "I just needed you to hear it from me." Behind them, the ballroom doors opened. Rosie appeared with one of the servers, holding a small box tied with gold ribbon. She looked between the two adults, blinking. "I got one for you too, Daddy," she said, holding up the box. Fletcher crouched to take it, brushing a hand over her hair. "Thanks, Bug, that was sweet of you." Piper knelt beside them. "Rosie, would it be okay if I took you and your dad home in the car tonight?" Rosie looked at Fletcher, then nodded. "Can we keep the music on this time?" Piper smiled. "Absolutely." The ride back was quiet. Rosie fell asleep across the back seat, her head lolling against a velvet pillow. Fletcher sat beside her, staring out the window while Piper sat across, watching him. When they reached the garage, he carried Rosie inside to her room in the small apartment above the shop. Piper waited in the car, not wanting to intrude. She didn't expect him to come back out. But after 10 minutes, he did. He slid into the seat beside her. "She's out cold." Piper nodded. "I didn't mean to drop all of that tonight. I didn't want any more lies between us." "I get it," he said after a moment. "I just wish I didn't find out from someone else." "That won't happen again," she said quietly, "if you'll let me fix it." He looked at her, finally really looked at her. Gone was the polished woman in the designer gown. Her face was bare now, her earrings gone. She looked tired, vulnerable. "I've spent the last 5 years building a life for Rosie," he said, "brick by brick. I can't let anyone knock it over, not even you." "I'm not here to tear it down," she said. "I want to be part of it, if you'll let me." He didn't answer right away. Then, "I don't fit in your world, Piper." "Then let's build a new one," she said. "One that fits all three of us." He exhaled slowly. "You're not going to make this easy, are you?" She smiled, but her eyes stayed serious. "I'm not giving up Fletcher." He opened the door. "Good night, Piper." "Good night," she said softly. He walked away without looking back. But as she sat in the car alone, she didn't feel defeated. She felt certain. He hadn't said no. And that was more than she'd expected. Rosie was humming to herself, a fistful of daisies clutched in one hand as she skipped down the sidewalk in front of the garage. Fletcher walked behind her, toolbox in hand, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the cracked pavement. When he saw the sleek silver SUV parked across the street, his step faltered. Piper stood beside it, arms folded, her hair caught in the breeze. She wasn't looking at him. She was watching Rosie. Fletcher stopped a few feet away. "You came back." Piper turned. "I told you I wasn't going anywhere." Rosie spotted her and ran forward without hesitation. "Piper, look what found." She held up the daisies triumphantly. Piper crouched, taking them like they were rare gems. "They're perfect," she said. "Thank you." Fletcher watched, unsure what to say. Piper stood, brushing her hands gently. "I didn't come here to stir things up," she said. "I came because there's something I want to show you, both of you." Rosie looked up. "Is it more cupcakes?" "Better," Piper said, her eyes on Fletcher. "But it's a surprise, and there's a seatbelt involved." He hesitated, then nodded. "Let me grab her bag." An hour later, they pulled through the gates of an estate that looked like it belonged in a movie. Fletcher didn't say anything, but his grip on Rosie's hand tightened as they stepped out of the car and into a garden filled with sculpted hedges, marble paths, and an old fountain trickling in the center. Piper led them through a side entrance into a building that didn't match the main house's opulence. It was newer, with open windows, long wooden tables, and shelves stacked with books and art supplies. Children's drawings lined the walls. "This is the Preston Community Center," she said. "My mother started it before she passed. It used to be a private guest house." Rosie wandered toward a wall covered in paintings, eyes wide. "I didn't know you ran this," Fletcher said. "I don't," Piper replied. "Not yet. I fund it, but I'm stepping in now, running the programs myself. It's been idle too long. I want to turn it into something real after school classes, tutoring, meals for families that need it. Places like this saved me when I was a teenager, even if I didn't admit it then." Fletcher crossed his arms. "Why show me this?" "Because I want you involved," she said. "I want to hire you to restore the old workshop out back, get it running again, teach the kids how to build something with their hands." He blinked. "You want me to teach?" "Who better?" she asked. "You patched together a life from nothing. That's exactly what these kids need to see." Rosie tugged on his arm. "Can I come here too?" Fletcher looked around, still processing. "I'm not a teacher, Piper." "You are," she said. "You just haven't been asked before." He turned in a slow circle, taking it all in. "You really thought this through." "I didn't want to just offer you money," she said. "I wanted to offer you a future, one we could build together." He studied her carefully. "You're not doing this out of guilt." "No, I'm doing it because you made me want something more than a name or a foundation. You made me want roots." Rosie had already wandered into a reading nook, flipping through picture books like she owned the place. Fletcher walked over to her, crouched beside her, then looked back at Piper. "All right," he said. I'll do it on one condition. What's that? You work Saturdays with me in the garage. Learn what it's like to fix something dirty and real. She smiled slowly. Deal. The next few weeks passed in fast, dizzying motion. Fletcher threw himself into restoring the workshop, ripping out warped floorboards, replacing rusted tools, wiring new lights with help from the local electrician. Piper was there every day, paint on her jeans, hair tied back, learning the difference between a socket wrench and a torque wrench. Rosie became the unofficial mayor of the community center. She made friends easily, bossed around the older kids, and insisted on naming every tool in the shop after a Disney character. One Friday afternoon, as the sun dipped low, Fletcher stood outside the workshop, wiping sweat from his brow. Piper approached, holding 2 lemonades. "You're not terrible with a nail gun," he said, taking one. "You're not terrible with a spreadsheet," she replied. "You know, for someone who claims to hate them." He chuckled. "You've got jokes now." She stepped closer. "I've got more than that." He looked at her, saw the hesitation in her eyes, the weight of something unsaid. "What is it?" "I've been offered a seat on the foundations board," she said. "Full control, but only if I agree to relocate, permanently, to London." His grip tightened around the glass. "When?" "They want an answer by the end of the month." "So that's it?" he asked, voice low. "Everything we've built here, you just walk away?" "I don't want to," she said. "That's why I haven't said yes. Fletcher, I don't care about the foundation. I care about you and Rosie, this place. I just needed to know what you want." He stepped forward, heart pounding. "I want you to stay." She held his gaze. "For how long?" "For good," he said, "if you'll have us." She looked like she couldn't breathe for a second. Then she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. She opened it to reveal a simple ring, rose gold, no diamonds, just a delicate engraving inside. "It's not a proposal," she said. "Not yet, it's a promise that I'm not going anywhere." He took the box, thumb brushing over the band. "I don't need a diamond," he said. "I just need you." She leaned in, and he met her halfway, their kiss quiet and certain under the fading sunlight. From the workshop window, Rosie pressed her face against the glass. "You, she whispered, before turning back to her book with a grin. That night, Fletcher tucked her into bed in the tiny apartment above the garage. Piper stood in the doorway, watching as Rosie curled into her blanket, unicorn clutched to her chest. When he stepped into the hall, Piper reached for his hand. "We could find a bigger place," she said. "One with space for a real kitchen, maybe a yard." He squeezed her fingers. "Long as it's close enough to the center, and the garage." She smiled. "Deal." Outside, the city buzzed. But inside that small space, where the scent of motor oil and lemon cleaner blended with the scent of something new, something warm, it felt like home. A home they had built together, brick by brick, heart by heart. The first snow of the season came early that year. Fletcher stood at the edge of the community center's garden, watching white flakes drift down onto the wooden benches and playground Piper had built with the help of half the neighborhood. The workshop behind him was quiet for once, the kids gone for winter break, the tools neatly hung on the pegboard wall. He turned at the sound of boots crunching behind him. "You're really going to just stand there and let it collect in your beard?" Piper asked, brushing snow off his shoulder before he could reply. "Didn't realize I'd become seasonal daker," he said, reaching for her gloved hand. "You're a whole winter mood," she teased, then leaned into him, her breath visible in the cold. He glanced down at her, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "Rosie make it to rehearsal." She did, Vanessa's with her. Bribed them both with caramel popcorn and swore I'd be back before curtain. "Remind me again how she got the lead." She told the director that if they didn't cast her as the Sugar Plum Fairy, she'd stage a glitter protest. Fletcher laughed softly. That checks out. They stood there for a long moment, watching the snow coat the garden she'd once walked through alone. He turned toward her, tone shifting. Why did you take the London offer? She met his eyes without hesitation, because it wasn't home. He held her gaze, and this is. You are, she said. He kissed her before she finished the second word. By the time they arrived at the school auditorium, the place was packed with folding chairs and bundled-up parents. Rosie spotted them from the side curtain and waved with so much force she nearly knocked off her felt crown. Fletcher lifted 2 fingers in a wave, his grin tugging at the corners of his mouth. Piper reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small paper bag. For Rosie after, cinnamon stars, I made them this morning. Fletcher raised a brow. You turn your back on the board of trustees, and suddenly you're baking. I had help, she said. Miss Irene from the center showed me how. Said if I was going to keep hanging around, I'd better learn to make something that didn't come with a catering invoice. He chuckled. That woman terrifies me. She adores you. Same thing. The lights dimmed before she could answer, and Rosie stepped onto the stage, her tall wings wobbling with every step. Fletcher leaned forward in his seat, hands clasped between his knees. She's not nervous, he whispered. She never is when she knows we're watching. After the curtain call, Piper and Fletcher waited by the back door, Rosie's costume dragging behind her as she ran into their arms. Did you see me twirl? She asked, cheeks flushed from excitement. Sweetheart, you were the only one up there who had a solo twirl, Fletcher said. That was my idea, she whispered. Told the music teacher I needed something dramatic. Piper bent down. You were magic. Rosie beamed. Can we get pancakes? Fletcher looked at Piper. Up for it. Only if I get the seat next to the star. Rosie took both their hands, tugging. Let's go before the syrup runs out. Later that night, after the pancakes and the cinnamon stars and the impromptu dance party in the apartment's tiny living room, Rosie finally fell asleep, her costume skirt spread across her bed like a snowdrift. Fletcher leaned against the doorframe, watching Piper tuck a blanket around her. She's going to remember this forever. Piper turned. So will I. He stepped into the hallway, reaching for her hand as they walked into the kitchen together. Things feel different now, he said, pouring 2 mugs of tea. They are. I used to think I had to choose, he admitted, between being a good father and letting anyone else in. She took the mug he offered and leaned against the counter. And now? Now I know don't have to pick, because you never asked me to. I wouldn't, she said. I didn't fall in love with part of you, Fletcher. I fell in love with all of it. The grease, the glitter, the waffles at midnight. He reached for something in his back pocket, pulling out a small box worn leather, clearly older than the velvet one she'd once given him. I've had this for a while, he said. It was my mother's. She told me to give it to someone who wouldn't run when things got real. Piper opened it slowly. Inside was a thin gold band with a single sapphire, deep blue and imperfect. She wouldn't have liked me, Piper said, brushing her thumb over it. She would have loved you, he corrected, because you stayed. He didn't kneel, he didn't need to. Will you marry me, Piper Preston? She closed the box and handed it back. Not unless you let me keep your last name. His mouth curved. Deal. They married in the garden behind the community center that spring. Rosie wore a flower crown and carried a sign that read, About time. The kids from the workshop built the arch from salvaged wood and covered it in wildflowers. The entire neighborhood came mechanics and teachers, baristas and retired bus drivers watching as Piper and Fletcher said their vows beneath an open sky. Afterward, as the sun dipped below the trees and the band played something soft and old, Piper rested her head on Fletcher's shoulder. "Think we'll ever have a quiet life?" she asked. "I hope not," he said. And she laughed because she knew exactly what he meant. Their life wasn't perfect. It was messy, loud, filled with stray glitter and half-finished projects, and kids who thought duct tape could fix everything. But it was theirs. And it was exactly what they'd built together.